Welcome back, gang. It's Delta from Delta's Gaming, and in this video we're going over the changes to weapon and armor traits. So the purpose of this video is trying to explain what's considered best in slot for armor traits and or weapons. So if you're looking for some guidance when the Dark Brotherhood launches, what to prepare, what to craft, this is the video for you. So let's get started. You're looking at the updated defending trait. Now, what it does on live servers is increase by a percentage based. What it does here is give you a flat percentage. Now, this is a two-hander, so it's going to give you the max value. If you're going to use sword and shield, however, you're going to divide that by 2 because the shield only comes in reinforced. It does not come in double defending. So that looks like it's a nice juicy buff for us. Even about 2,500, that's going to give us some increase. So I did a side-by-side comparison screenshot here, and you can see the armor value and the spell resistance change. It's almost 2k more armor and about 1k more spell resistance. So that's a really good thing for the tank. So ideally, I'm going to show you Infused in a little bit. You're probably going to want the either defending in Infused or defending in the new weighted trait. So let me get to that. But tanks, if you like defending, you're hopefully not going to have to use any more tempers to do something new. Now, this Infused trait is underrated, undervalued, and it's a big change because enchantments now, weapon enchantments, got to boost almost double effectiveness. So this Infused trait becomes really, really handy, especially for tanks, and I'm going to show you why. So it increases weapon enchantment effect by 20% and reduces enchantment cooldown by 40%. So largely it stays the same, except that now weapon enchants are a lot better because they want to keep up with poison. So let me show you an optimal way to design a tank or a STAM DPS build centered around something like this. Here's a picture of the Crushing Enchant on the live server so you can see what it does. You can apply this to your weapon, reuse it every 5 seconds, and it strips their armor by 927. Now that's actually quite a bit, but look what it is on the public test server. Applied on the weapon, it's 1622 for 5 seconds. Now it also gives physical and spell resistance. This can stack with all the major and minor fractures, so you can get a lot of physical and spell penetration using a combination of these. But wait, it gets better. Now if you apply an Infused trait on your weapon and use this, say, on your back bar or specifically a tank, so you can load up more crit or more penetration on your own weapons, the effects are devastating. So here it is on a fully legendary Infused, same crushing on the PTS, almost 2k physical and spell resistance. Now, only one person needs to run this specifically in a 4-man or a trial. So ideally, if you're going to be fully buffed and have a really detailed trial team, you could have your tank run this and only attack light attack on their back bar using an Infused trait and defending on their main block bar. So those that don't understand and defend Infused, it's really, really good. Paired with some couple of specific enchants, it's a big DPS boost. And now for the big change. It's going to take a while for people to kind of figure out what this means. Increase damage of this weapon by 11%. So what that means, it's not like only your light attacks and weaving. This means like your actual weapon, your base spell, and a physical damage. So let me show you what this looks like in game so you can kind of grasp if this is good or not to use. And it's going to be based on what you're playing, if you want to use this or not. Okay, now we're going to get over the big power 3 traits in game, which is NiRn, Hoenn, Sharpen, and Precise. What should you use DPS wise? So the NiRn, Hoenn change, I want to show you this. Right now I have equipped Decisive, which we're going to go over here in a second. Increase damage of this weapon by 11%. So just look at my spell damage. This is a stand build just for illustration's sake, but I equip it, my spell damage and my weapon damage go up by 11%. So you're getting, that's a two-hander, so you're getting both those values. If it's a one-hander, divided by 2, obviously. So NiRn Hoenn is really good still. What would you use NiRn Hoenn for and why? Well, in my opinion, NiRn Hoenn would be really, really good in PvP. And the reason why is in this update, which I'm going to add a video for skills, everyone has available shields. So right here, if you look at Harness Magic or Annulment, this thing got changed. Everyone still has access to this. Let's see if I have it morphed. I do. So if we go to Harness Magic, surround yourself with Magic, Negate, Absorb up to 4680 damage. It does not say magic damage, meaning it's kind of like Harden Ward for every single class. You cannot crit wards, and shields. So that's why NiRn would be more beneficial than, let's say, Precise or something like that. So to further illustrate this point, if we go into Undaunted, Bone Shield. Now, surrender yourself with a shield equivalent to 30% of your max health. So this shield will now affect, guess what, magic and stamina or physical damage. So everyone has access, whether it's stamina or magic based, to a shield, especially in PvP, because you're not going to run into too many NPCs that are going to be using shields and shield stacking against you. So that's my case for making NiRn probably one of the best in slot traits all around in PvP. Now, obviously, there's going to be builds that focus on different things. So let's go over Sharpened. Sharpened now, if you look at it, it's just like defending, right? So it didn't have a flat value, had percentage. Well, now it has a flat value. This is a monster amount of resistance, because this can stack on top of Major Fractal. It can stack on top of Minor, which comes from the Templar, Power of the Light. And it can also stack on Crushing Enchant. It can stack on top of Alkosh. It can stack on top of Night Mother's Gaze. So you can literally strip all of the entire armor. But let's rewind it here for a second. So you notice all those buffs I was talking about. Not every group, not every team is going to be running those, specifically in trials and or 4-mans. So ideally, if you're running a fully optimized team where everyone in your trials group or dungeon group is running these very specific buffs, most likely you're not going to get a whole lot of value over Sharpened, because the boss is going to basically be reduced to nothing anyways, so it's not that valuable. Now, however, if you're doing Bet Maelstrom Arena solo, you're playing with a 4-man group and you don't have the best endgame gear, you're pugging it, there's a lot of value in running Sharpen, especially in PvP as well, because if you run a bow with a Crushing Enchant or these poisons now, trust me, it hits very, very hard. So Sharpen is still very, very good. Now, let's go to Precise. Precise works for almost everything, but its effects are somewhat based on your specific build and how often you can crit. So let's take the instance of a Magic Nightblade here. On a Magic Nightblade, what I do is a funnel health ability. Does damage up front and then heals me and someone else over time. So I have two opportunities to crit with one ability. I have an opportunity to crit with my damage, and then I have opportunities to crit with that heal over time as well. So critting in PvE, bosses don't crit you, you can crit them. They don't have any crit resistance, and then also your heals are based off of this as well. So it really depends on what you're using. And if you have that fully optimized group and everyone in there is using Warhorn, you're stacking a lot of that new buff with Guard, the Stalwart Guard for the minor and major force, I'm telling you, Precise is the way to go. So I know this is complicated. I know this is hard to understand. I'm no math nerd. A lot of this credit goes to Gil. So if you don't know what to go with, when in doubt, I'd probably go with Sharpened. It's really effective. It's going to be effective a lot of different places, and it's not going anywhere. I suggest to you to test it yourself. Now, I tested it by creating purple weapons and then kind of just going around and beating on stuff. And then this brings up a good point. Increase your weapon and spell damage by 3, 4, 8 for 5 seconds. That got buffed, and also includes spell damage as well. So that's another powered enchant available to magic users. Big buff for magic users. Okay, let's move on. I hope this answered your guys' questions. Please leave me comments about this specific thing, because I know it's hard to understand. And now we have the powered trait, which is increased healing done by 3.5%, or if you're using dual wield or a two-hander, it's at 7%. I don't think this is as valuable as it appeared to be at first for me, and the reason why is crit. You're going to get 7% of the value, and it affects every single thing you do. It affects what you heal, you do your damage, and sometimes the healing done, like specifically the blessed thing in the champion points, I think people overheal a lot of the time, and I'd rather have something like Precise that affects both damage and healing than say powered. But if you're looking for some extra healing power and it might be really beneficial with Battle Spirit and PvP, this could be good. But for me, I still stick with Precise. We got a really cool trait here. It's called Decisive. When you gain ultimate, you have a 34% chance to gain an additional ultimate. I don't think a lot of builds are going to be using this, but I think very specific builds, like a Sap Nightblade maybe in PvP, and my Tava's tank. Because remember that it's while you gain ultimate, and if you stack all the ultimate generating things like Major Heroism, you're using your Earth and Heart to get back ultimate as a Dragon Knight, you're using Heroic Slash, you're using the Bloodspawn, and you're using Tava's, which is over time, so you get your ultimate over time. This would be really cool, and I want to test this out on my Tava's tank and see if I can get even more Warhorns to go off. So for very specific builds, I think this is good, but when in doubt, tanks or anyone else, maybe stick with Defending or Sharpened if you're not for sure on this. The last significant change to weapon traits is training. Increases experience gain from kills by 9%. This also stacks with your armor training, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. So it makes it a lot easier to level. The downside, though, is it does not acquire. It's not based on the skill line anymore, which was, I thought, very, very useful. Because when I'm leveling a stamina build, specifically a Stam Dragon Knight, getting Rally early makes the game a lot easier for me. Because I have a self-heal, a heal on demand that's based on stamina that increases with power over time. So I wish this was in addition to that, but 9% on kills and only 50 levels and no VR ranks. This is going to be pretty nice for those players returning or coming back for the first time. So we have Prosperous, which is replacing the Exploration trait. Exploration trait basically gave you more XP for discovering things, and wasn't that effective unless you're going to ride around an entire new zone with a full set of it. So this isn't effective as either. Increases gold gain by looting enemies by 8.5%. Now you can stack it with more and more pieces, but really the gold that I'm getting in game comes from getting the materials and either deconstructing it and selling the mats or vendoring the items. So I don't see a whole lot of advantage to using this, especially when you're leveling, if you're trying to make a little bit extra money, I guess. But I'm a little disappointed this trait wasn't more useful. So we have Impenetrable here, which is resistance to critical hit damage. The thing to know about this is that the item takes 50% less durability damage, meaning if you're fighting NPCs. So that's a good change for PvPers that own repair, but most likely you're not going into delves unless you're getting the AP bonus or you're fighting people at resources and whatnot. The thing I'll tell you about crit resistance, it's really useful. Two things you want to know. You can't crit shields, and that the crit resistance cap is around 3,300. So ideally with the transmutation set, if you're running a coordinated group and you're all using 5 to 6 pieces of legendary, you can hit that cap with that buff up. So it's a little bit better, but still very, very useful. If you're going for a full burst build, you're probably going to want to use Divines, but almost everyone in PvP is going to have some Impen. I stack about 6 pieces of it full legendary. Okay, so we have NiRn, which changed pretty big time. Increases physical and spell resistance by 301. Now this is max, and this is on a large slot. I changed it around, and it doesn't seem like it benefits from large versus small. So this is going to be comparable to running Reinforce. So I did some tests on that. Running Reinforce gives you about 500 to 600 on a large piece if you're going to be using Infused. And so this gives you both physical and spell resistance. So it might be something beneficial for those that aren't running Defending or are not at hard cap, because it does give you both. But some specific classes, some specific races get benefits from spell resistance, such as a Breton. So in that instance, you're probably going to want to run Infused, Reinforced over NiRn or something like that. Now, what coming is my favorite trait change, Sturdy. Reduce block cost, baby. Yes, I love this change. So 3%, you can stack it with more things. You can also stack it on your jewelry. Reduce block cost. You can even do champion points, basically amounting to, it's pretty much free to block. The downside of blocking is, well, you don't regenerate stamina, but as we've seen, Eric Roble, YG Nerf, Black Rose, that you can get around some of those things with the block cost, with regeneration, resources, using a Repentance, Black Rose set, all sorts of different things. So if you're running for a true tank, I really like Sturdy. But just remember that you're going to need to hit those numbers, those 33,000 marks for resistance. So if you can hit that, I would offset a couple pieces of your gear with some sturdy to lower the stamina burden on you as a tank. Some PvPers that run sword and board might also like this, but they're probably going to like well fitted a whole lot better. That's what we call a pro Segway, kids. That was pretty good. Come on. Okay, reduce the cost of sprinting and roll dodging by 5%. Well, that's one piece of legendary gear. So do the math. You stack this along with some of the things in the champion points, and guess what? Those infinite dodge rollers of old, yeah, they're going to be back, especially with the changes to the skirmisher set. It would be really advantageous and a really cool build to run 5 pieces of skirmisher all well fitted, stacking a lot of points into the champion points, reduce dodge cost, and living or dying by the dodge roll, and not have to worry about impenetrable. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. I think a lot of people are going to be using this. As I showed you before, this is training once again on the armor, so 11% at a legendary status, and this would make you fly through XP. So I like that ZOS has an ear to the streets, or to the ground, or whatever you want to call it, and they're actually listening to feedback, making it easier to level. I really like this change, stacking it with a bunch of different things and your weapon. You can fly through them vet ranks. Oh wait, there is no vet ranks. Well, gang, thank you for watching. It's a really complex topic, it's traits, and I recommend that you test it for yourself. If you ask 10 different people what is the best trait for your weapon or armor, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. So test it. When in doubt, do the research on your own, because a lot of the times things change, and it's based on what you're doing specifically. Are you a PvE? Are you a PvPer? Are you running solo PvP? Are you doing a gank build? Are you running a trials group with very specific buffs and rotations? All that's going to determine a lot of different things. So try it out, test, and see what you do. Overall, my opinion, I really like the trait changes, besides a couple. And I think that making traits more valuable is going to revive some of these old contents, because guess what? Now you're going to have to run that Ancient Guardian 10,000 more times to get your sturdy trait or whatever you want for that very specific build. So, kudos to ZOS. A couple things I think could be better, but making all the traits pretty much useful now is a good thing for the game. Please leave me some comments about traits. What do you guys think, especially weapon? If you guys have tested it out, what are your experience? Also, if you like this content, please subscribe. It really helps me out. Like it and share it as well. Thank you so much for watching.